get this show on the road then, people. It's Helen for YouFit Studio. Right, doing... Oh, okay, is plant-based better was a question. Although I think it's just going to develop some questions around plant-based eating. So I'm going to cover, actually, as silly as it sounds, actually some confirmation over the different variations of labelling stuff. It is a bit of a label. The labelling of ways that people choose to eat their food and in what order of importance. It was fascinating reading up on this again. Because, I don't know, a lot of this will be some of my personal beliefs probably as well, to be fair. And mixed in some stuff. Because it's fascinating when you start to read people's opinions. It gets all very heated around this topic. I would say this on the line. On the line, gets a little bit heated. So I'm going to go over some understandings of what it means and what different terminologies mean. I will probably label myself just for fun, because everything needs a label in life, apparently. Just go over some experiences I've had with working with clients who have transitioned from meat eater to vegetarian to vegan, and what that transition is like, and what have I seen. And it actually, if I think about, I could probably even go over what I've seen over the last 3 years in terms of this, because it has changed over 3 years, quite a fair bit, to be honest. A lot. The very most common myth or misconception about plant-based eating, which I probably think did think, to be honest, at some point before as a client and a coach. Just some ideas to go towards if you are considering going more plant-based. Just some suggestions, again, from working with people and also I've experienced. Oh, throwing my pen around. Just to see, just so you get an understanding of what you can do, how it can work for you, and how to transition, essentially, if that's just what you're wishing to do. So, Heather will be able to comment on this as well, actually. So this is something that she's had a lot of change around over the last few months. Okay then. Now this is interesting when I looked at the definition of these, because I was like, oh, is this an actual thing? Because all the definitions were a bit, I'm not sure if I completely agree with them. However, some of it's quite straightforward, right? Because you can say plant-based eating. That's quite a broad term, though, actually, when it comes down to it. Because you have vegetarians who eat vegetables and dairy products. Then you have vegans who eat plant-based products and no dairy products. Pescatarians who eat fish. And then you've got flexitarians. Oh, this is probably me. Flexitarian. Flex. It's just basically it's everything, essentially. Just flexes to labelling. There's some other ones in there as well which are all very interesting but they're the ones that are more common that we see these days. Myth bust number one. Myth bust number one. That being vegetarian and or vegan or a plant-based eater automatically makes someone healthier and automatically helps them lose weight. As a coach, I think I've probably had it, not a lot, enough though. I think on average twice a year, which is actually, it just says a lot about people. I want to lose more weight, Helen. I'm going to go vegan, and I'm always a bit hesitant to go all in there. With that, or actually, this is actually what's usually happened. A client's actually already gone vegan without talking to me, probably like a few days before, like a week before. But I want to lose more weight. I've gone vegan. And I'm like, okay, how's that working? Oh, you don't like it. And we'll get into that why in a bit. So often the misconception is that to be more healthier is to be vegetarian and or vegan or plant based, and actually it's not actually the case. And some of that will be actually if I go into this now. 3 years ago, I had a client who transitioned to vegetarian to vegan, plant-based all the time, and went vegan. And she really struggled, actually, not with that element of it. She actually struggled to find places to eat out at restaurants. She found it difficult to find alternative products in supermarkets, etc. And then over the last 18 months to 2 years, she's just struggled in a completely different way, in that plant-based eating has become very popular, and with that has come more options to eat out. So whereas before she would most commonly not socialise as much as her friends or join them later, whereas now a lot of places to go out to eat have a vegan menu, which is fantastic. It also means that there's just as much choice in terms of a range of eating for plant-based eaters as well as meat eaters, and that means desserts and starters and all the vegan alternatives to other food types, right, that aren't necessarily calorifically any less. If anything, sometimes they're even more. And what that means is that when a client says to me, kind of looping on this, if a client says to me, I want to lose weight, I want to become plant-based or vegetarian or vegan, I'd always talk through them now actually what that entails and what that means in terms of weight loss, if that's the reason why they're actually transitioning onto a more plant-based diet, because that's not necessarily the case in the world of which we're living right now. And I think Heather can attest to that actually, and actually Danny as well, because Danny's just doing, is that making vegan or plant-based choices doesn't mean necessarily calorifically less. That's a mouthful. It doesn't. And actually, as time has transitioned with this one particular client I've worked with over all these years, actually it's got progressively harder for her to make those choices, just because there's for in terms of health choices, because there are just so much more choices available, and they're all very calorifically dense. So again, one of the first thing I say before we get into any other discussion around it is that myth number one: plant-based eating isn't necessarily healthier these days, based on what's available for you to find, and that's just not eating out. That's also a supermarket as well. Take a walk down any aisle now for the alternatives, and they're pretty well stocked, and that means all the stuff that wants to attract people, like vegan ice cream and vegan magnums and all the vegan goodness that actually has not been available before. So it's not necessarily the case that you'll lose weight. Point number one. That myth number two. Who's had this myth? I've had this one. I've heard that eating vegetables is great, and I'd like to go plant-based. I'm not sure. I just know that I won't be able to get enough protein because I eat meat every day right now. Just standard. It's the standard thing. So again, myth number two: if you are vegetarian or plant-based, and that it is not possible to get enough protein into your diet through existing food choices. There would be a no. Kind of going back to my first point as well about choices, actually on the flip side of it, as much as there is more junk food available for plant-based eaters now, there is equally now as much more choice in terms of quite decent protein sources. There was a time to, and again Heather might attest to this, to find tofu in a supermarket was scrummaging round the world food, up and down the world food aisle, like, where is the tofu? Where is the tofu? You could never find it. You could never find any kind of plant-based sources easily in supermarkets. Again, on the flip side, as much as there's other food available, there are now quite decent protein sources available. So myth bust two, yes, there's plenty of protein sources available. I made a list, of course, tofu being number one because it's my favourite, always. Edamame beans, I said it right because I always want to say dami beans, and Sarah's watching, she's going to tell me off for saying it the wrong way. Lentils, beans, chickpeas are always a decent one. Fundamentally, there's protein in most things in life. We just don't recognise them as a protein source. We get onto the mixed grill debacle again, where we go too far into protein in that sense in a meat situation. However, I did talk about that live as well, that it's not about looking at something as it's a product from an animal, therefore it is the best protein source available. It has everything I need. Actually, all things that have some, like broccoli has protein, not a lot. I mean, it's like 2 grams per 100, I think it is. But if you're going to slam back your body weight, I guess you get there in the end. Probably wouldn't smell very good afterwards, but you know that the point is that you can make up a meal of lentils, rice, and a good green leafy vegetable, and you've got nutritionally everything you need, including protein, for you in that one meal. Heather is saying the tofu was always a long life suspicious looking. Yes, true. Yes, you know, it was a sell-by date on a tofu and wondered. But it was brilliant, and that's the thing about plant-based eating. Actually, if you know these things, and why actually fundamentally it's it. I will say this on the plus side, we'll give a tick to plant-based eating immediately. It's a lot cheaper way of eating. Tofu, the most expensive thing is probably tofu, depending if you what brand you go for. Actually, though, I've noticed this: the more plant-based I go, the shorter my food bill's getting. It's a very great way of cooking. Okay, Heather again saying absolutely. There's a lot of choices now that plant-based, very processed, yes, and have a lot of added ingredients, can be higher calories or not as healthy. Yes. I know you've never tried these, Heather, but All Plants is a great example of that. All Plants is fantastic. I would say this, they are a fantastic food prep company, vegan based, and I have used them, and I would use them again. Actually, absolutely fitted with my lifestyle. Actually, if you look at the calorie content of some of those, because they use cashew as a means of doing a lot of their sauces and butters and stuff, it is actually very dense in calories. So yeah, it's not, as I say, it's not necessarily, going back to the original point, it's not necessarily healthier because it is plant-based. But yeah, again, it's there's other things, there's other ways of looking at protein. And for vegetarians, remember, it's not just vegan. Vegetarians can have Greek yogurt, 0% Greek yogurt as a protein source, adequate protein in that. Egg whites, again, for vegetarians. Cottage cheese, yeah, bang it in. Absolutely. So, again, myth 2, it's not possible to get a decent amount of protein in. So myth 1, it's healthier. Off the bat, it's not healthier, right? It's not necessarily just because it is. Well, the best one, just going back to that point again, because I always get it. Oh yeah, I had a. It's okay, Helen. It was a vegan pizza. I know. No, people. It's the same amount of calories. Kind of covers all those points there. Another thing I get, and this is probably transitioning now into people who are actually transitioning, if they find it hard or if it is better or worse for them to become more plant-based, is a lot of people find initially, they find that using, how can I put this? You just could fart a lot if you transition into proteins that are beans and legumes, because, and I touched a little bit about carbohydrates and gut and gut microbiome and all the techie sciencey stuff, and then actually what tends to happen a lot within the first few weeks is that someone say, I don't think this is good for me, I don't think plant-based is working, I'm just farting a lot. And it's often because actually, to be fair, some beans and pulses aren't always fantastic in terms of gut. Now, it's not to say they're not good for you, they are. It's just always about small increments. So I usually say to a client, maybe just try a few spoons into your meal to start with, see how your gut deals with it, or diversify and try something different. There's usually one that is killer. It's usually, to be fair, it seems to be the kidney bean. I've tried all sorts. Tried black beans, navy beans. Navy beans are really nice. Butter beans, all of those. Right? There's a whole selection of different ways of looking at it that will be a little bit nicer on your gut, shall we say, and not so full on. So often people say, no, it didn't work out for me. Plant-based wasn't better because my gut was terrible. I just found I wasn't getting off the toilet. It was just too much for me, too much fibre right off the bat. And a lot is because actually they're again, I might even do a live on this. This slow eating is a fantastic way of also helping you in those situations. If you're intending to go more plant-based, or you would want to feel the benefits of plant-based eating, slow eating and introducing those foods in that terms, or slow eating meal 20 minutes, right, it'll actually help you digest it a lot better, and it can actually eradicate a lot of the problems. The thing is that it doesn't matter if you're plant-based or not. If you're wolfing down your meal, you're still going to have some challenges with digestion. So however you look at it, it still helps to do that. So then, if you are looking to do it and you do want to experience the benefits of becoming more plant-based, How would you go about it? Well, I've already touched on a couple of points, like definitely faux show. Start slowly in every level of it. I do recall a conversation I had with somebody. I'm trying to work out the timeline now. It's probably about 18 months ago, and they are vegan and have been vegan for a number of years. And the advice that I was given was start slowly with a couple of days. So if you are, say you want to go from meat eater to vegetarian, incorporate a couple of vegetarian meals during the week. If you want to extend that and start to slowly transition to more vegetarian meals over meals that include an animal, you know, like a flesh or a fish or whatever, let that transition, and then at that point maybe introduce a couple of days where there's no dairy. So slowly start to transition it. And having done that, I realised that was the best advice. Having done both, by the way, having gone full, I'm doing it this week, from Monday. From Monday I will be. Did it, I went there, I experienced it to say, okay, this is how it works, this is what happens. It didn't work, no surprise. Fell at day 4. And then resetting and going again and taking that advice and doing it slowly, I've experienced with clients as well. It's a lot easier way to move through to something, to see and feel how that works for you. It does take a lot of planning. That's another point to make. It's slow, it takes transition, and it takes planning. I think I do think for any client, whatever the dietary choices are, plant-based or not, planning and looking ahead to your meals or how you're going to do your meals is always preferential. Certainly, again, with plant-based eating, that I have to say there is actually, from my experience so far, and anybody watching can agree or disagree, I found it requires me to plan more than even when I had meat in my diet as much or more, because I can have meat in my freezer for an amount of time. I can't probably, well, I've never tried. I wouldn't want to freeze a lot of my vegetables. I would want to have them fresh. And even though I do have frozen vegetables in it, but I wouldn't, there's lots of stuff that I want to consume within an amount of time because I want it to, that's maybe a personal thing. But I have found it does require a little bit more planning. That doesn't mean it's better or worse. It just means that it just takes some more consideration. And like I discovered today, it's like, oh, I'm going to have a stir fry tonight. Yeah, I'm going to have what was I going to do? I was going to do, I've got kidney beans in chili sauce, and I was going to do a nice stir fry with it. And school girl error, didn't check the sell by date on the stir fry, so it's 2 days gone. I'm like this, fighter. So it does take a little bit more planning and awareness. From my personal opinion, that doesn't mean it's always the case. Again, if somebody doesn't have that experience or disagrees with me, I think it's always difficult as well when you're doing online shopping, because you can't necessarily control the date of what you're getting. With all things anyway, it seems to be a little bit more challenging when you're more plant-based. So benefits of then. There may be some dietary reasons of which being more plant-based is preferential. Whether it's, and I've talked about this a little bit in 2 other lives. I've talked about elimination diets for any particular reason. It does extend to dairy products, dairy being the number one of, actually is the number, I haven't rechecked this statistic. Sometime ago the statistic was 1 in 4. 1 in 4 people have some level of signs of intolerance that they're having on a daily basis, and it's due to dairy. And so a reason to eradicate dairy from food would be essentially, well, transitioning to a vegan dietary set. And actually that's not, those people would enjoy the benefits of not having the irritations of skin or with sinuses or gut issues, etc. So the benefits for those people would be literally on the physical side of it, for sure. Now, the thing is about having a, let's just say this is now where it comes into a personal opinion thing, being that I'm kind of gone from very, very meat and to veg upbringing. I don't think we ever had. I'm just trying to remember. As a child, I don't ever remember having a meal that didn't include a meat? On the spot, I'm trying to remember, and I just don't. My nan was the same. Both my nans were the same. My parents were the same. Both of them meat and 2 veg. That was a standard meal. Principally not a bad idea, right? Because actually, I always had vegetables growing up. I just never had a meal without it. And so having been raised like that, going through all my 20s and 30s in the same vein, and then decided to change. And there wasn't any particular reason, by the way. I have no ethical reasons, although I think in time that might come. My personal opinion of being more plant-based, again, Heather is generally has been as well previously, and she might have an opinion on it for herself. It's really hard to explain other than to say that my sleep is better, my digestion is much better. I tend to find I have more energy. I know that, and I have, when I have reintroduced meat into my diet, for I think hanging on to the memory of having so much meat, as I know the mixed grill situation happened, right? That happened on live. I went mad, literally just had meat joys, and yet actually when I have it, it's not as pleasurable, and I definitely notice a difference over the next 24-40 hours after I have meat, any meat now actually. Fish is the only thing that I think I can have and I don't notice anything. Any meat, and I'm talking chicken or turkey, pork, beef. I've not even had lamb I don't even know the last time I had lamb. However, just generally speaking, the only word I use, and I use it quite a lot to describe it, is I think I'm more efficient, energy-wise, sleep-wise, digestion. Everything ticks more efficiently. Heather's saying the same thing. Every one of those is what I was thinking. Sleep, digestion, and energy. Yeah, it's fascinating. Even down to, I have to admit, as much as this perils me, and Kate is still here. Kate's over on Instagram. It's even cheese. I distinctly feel, and at the minute I've not had any for at least 10 days, and I know my body feels a lot better for not. I've gone plant-based bread. Even the small things, right? Everything. Yeah, just generally. So it's an interesting one, and that is kind of relative to me though. So everyone's experience is different. I do find of clients I've worked with that have moved more into it, they have reported about the same things or similar to, generally speaking. A lot of clients will normally, I have to be honest, transition for medical reasons, or for some reason that there's a greater leverage, right? We talked about change and leverage and behaviours. There's greater leverage for them to change their diet because there's a reason for them to do it. Kate says she's not had cheese in 3 weeks. How do you feel, Kate? I know. And the thing is, I think it's like most things in life with me. I think it's human nature. You look forward to something so much, and the reality is it's not as good as you think it's going to be. Certainly on my body. And therefore, for me, plant-based eating will now be a preferential choice. It's really interesting because I am, okay, so here's the fact. I'm not in the lockdown zone. I am going out to dinner on Saturday. I've looked at the menu out of habit because I always look at the menu before I attend somewhere. Just do. I like to know that there's choices on there. And this is quite a nice place. And there's really nice meat choices on there. And I have already pre-ordered my meal. And it's a vegan choice. I'm having lentil cottage pie. I'm really excited about that. Which I don't know how much that says about me, because I think if I talked to myself 2 years ago and said, do you know what, you're going to have your first meal out after being 4 months indoors and you're going to order lentil cottage pie, I think I'd slap myself in the face like, no, how dare you not have a steak with Stilton sauce. Kate's like, that's what I would have. No. And yet, that's now my choice, because I think the idea of something like the idea of going out and making that choice there, actually, as opposed to how I know I'll actually feel afterwards, isn't worth it for me. The leverage is I want to feel good and enjoy not just the meal, the next day after as well, and still have that efficient sense about my body and my energy levels. Again, it's interesting because when I made the point earlier, anybody can try this and see how it feels to be more plant-based. Absolutely. Again, all it is incorporating even one meal a week where there is no meat source in the meal and it's purely vegetarian, or even vegan, can start to integrate that and then start to sense check, like most things, like, do I like it or not? Is this something we can do or not? Kate's already out with a lasso trying to fire a local cow for a steak. I have a saying, there's been way more meat in my diet since lockdown with cooking a range of different things. I do feel better when it is less so though. Yeah. And it's so hard, isn't it, to define, I think, unless you've tried it to know how it feels. Because it is such a feel. Like Heather's used, I was declining the word, I was consciously not saying the word feel because it's an emotion based word, right? And yet that is exactly how I do feel too. I was saying I think I feel more efficient to move away from it because it's so hard to quantify with labels, etc. Unless somebody actually experiences what it feels like to be more plant-based or more vegetarian, they will understand the difference. Equally, it's interesting because if you've always spoken to somebody who's side point, they always do this with vegetarian clients. When I start with them, a lot of vegetarian clients don't actually eat plants to start with, but also a lot of vegetarian. This is what it says about the where we are with choices when it comes to plant-based or not. More and more when I speak to vegetarian clients who've been raised vegetarian all their lives, they just cannot understand the kind of influx of protein sources that look like meat because they can't get their heads around it, because it's like, well, I don't eat meat, so why would I want to choose protein that looks like meat? And that's really interesting, right? Because I spoke to a client today who just purely just had lentils and pulses all her life, and she's like, do you want me to have this stuff? I'm like, no, not if it's not something you want to have. Like, don't change your belief system about not eating something that looks like meat because you don't eat meat for that reason. I've avoided all the issues around ethics around meat on this whole of this episode because that's something else, right? Ultimately, personal opinion, do I think it's better? Yes, I do think it's better. Experience has told me so far it is better. Generally speaking, Skins Well was better. Like 6 months of eating more plants, and it's without fail. And the interesting thing is that I introduced protein recently into my diet, and I absolutely felt the consequences. So again, it's for me better, and I think for everybody else who's listening, watching this, for you to understand that more is always down to you're not going to be you're not going to be deficient in anything, shall we say that. There are options there. The supplements for B12, calcium in dark green leaves, right? Anything kale, anything like that has enough cabbages. They will have enough of calcium in it. You can get omega-3 in flax seeds, hemp seeds, walnuts. You can get algae supplements, right, that take care of all that. So you're never going to be deficient in anything. You're just going to feel the benefit of having actually colour whole foods. It gets to the point where I just crave colour. It's just people go, I crave chocolate. I'm like, I crave colour. It says a lot about my brain. So recap. So throw out some labels. So I've throw out a label: flexitarian. We've got vegetarians and vegans, and a whole host in between, and lots of different names. We like to put people in labels around food. I mean, the point doesn't make somebody naturally automatically healthy or healthier, or automatically means they can lose weight because they are on a plant-based or vegetarian diet, because of all the choices that are out there now. Over the 3 years, what I said, it's almost patented. When I started, it was almost done. It was a very unheard of thing to have a vegan option on the menu. Now it's really rare to go to somewhere that hasn't, actually. And being that I've been dating a vegan for 12 months, it is the main priority of anywhere you go to eat. So you're always checking, and hence, even because I look at it so much, I've seen it such an uplift in it, which is brilliant, and also challenging if you are losing weight, because there's a vegan for everything that's high calorie, just as if you are eating meat or dairy products. So vegetarian doesn't necessarily mean you will lose weight in lots of cases. Again, myth bust one, you won't lose weight just because it's vegan. There's an option, it's healthier. 2, that you can't get protein. I went through, because you can, plenty of it. It's not better or worse to get protein or not into your diet, and it's absolutely okay. Went through some sources, how to look after yourself if you're going to do it, by the way. So what will likely flare off your gut, what you can do to combat it. Planning, lots of planning, move slowly, transition, and you will feel the benefit of the efficiency. It doesn't seem like a very sell point, however it is. Better sleep, better recovery, generally more energy is what I've experienced personally myself, hence why I advocate at least trying 1 day to 2 days a week with a more plant-based diet. Right. And I said, I did make point 3, it's a lot healthier on your wallet as well. Hell of a lot less on meat. So yes, tomorrow. Tomorrow. Oh, what is happiness to you? This will be one of those ones where I just throw in a belief and see how everyone reacts. So, have a lovely evening. I'm going to try and sort out what I can salvage from my stir fry option. This is all out of date. In the meantime, have a lovely evening, and I will see you soon.